Bunnahabhain 12-year-old Islay single malt Scotch whiskey is double matured in ex-bourbon and ex-sherry casks. It is lightly peated, unchill filtered with natural color. There is no E150A added, and bottled at 46.3% alcohol by volume. Welcome to another Erik Waite Whiskey Studies premiere. We are just heading into the final week of Islay month, and this has been absolutely fantastic. Due to scheduling, normally I probably would have done this whiskey at the very, very, very end, but to make the most of scheduling, I'm doing this a little bit early, but I will have another Bunnahabhain at the end to wrap up Islay month, and I'll do some Coilers before that. So been really enjoying these premieres. I've had Vin on, I had Alan from Whiskey Friend, had a live stream with Roy from Aquavite. Been having an absolutely fantastic time. I had Jeremy from Sippers Social Club, and I have saved the best for last. Today I've got two guests actually on today. I've got Jason Whiskey Wise and Mr. Bananas. Say hello, Jason.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Erik, for having me on the show. Me and Mr. Bananas as well. I'm making a special guest appearance out of the studio at the minute. So he's actually kind of chuffed to be out there as well.
All right. So now people are going, okay, things are getting a little weird here. So just to let people know, wait a minute. Erik has a chimpanzee. Erik has a monkey. So in case someone's curious, we're going to get into whiskeys. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about monkeys, but I actually told Jason about this. We met up last June in London. You might recognize this guy. This is, what was your name again?
Mr. Bananas?
Oh, yeah, this is Mr. Bananas. This is Mr. Bananas. And this is what we're drinking tonight. All this stuff over here. Drinking all this. I spent 2 days in London. Jason was my tour guide around London. We had a great time hanging out at Milroy's, and then he showed me around the whiskey exchange. And I mentioned that I had a monkey. I've had this since I was a wee lad, before Jason was actually born. And my mother, I got this for Christmas, I think second grade. So I was 7 years old. And my mother saved the letter that I wrote to Santa Claus. I've now got it in this frame here. But anyway, I won't read it to you. But anyway, so I've had this for a really long time. And he actually traveled with me to into the Marine Corps. I didn't get to take him to boot camp, but I had him in barracks when I was stationed at Camp Pendleton. So this is Zip, a really old monkey. But anyhow, we're not going to spend any more time on that. So I want to introduce Jason here. Jason and I, we know each other, but I kind of like to introduce, the guests that I have on. I get to know each other a little bit more about each other's whiskey journey and where we're going from and what we like and so forth. So, Jason, what's the story behind Mr. Bananas?
The story behind Mr. Bananas, actually, the way he actually came to even be on the YouTube channel is initially I did a monkey shoulder review, and I thought it'd be kind of fun as I had this toy monkey in the house. And I said, you know what? Let's start the review with a monkey on my shoulder and actually say, today we're going to review monkey shoulder, not the monkey on my shoulder, but the actual whiskey. And as soon as I did that video is doing quite well. And that one, then from there, people started asking, why is the monkey not coming back? Why is he not making a reappearance? And then I said, you know what? May as well bring him on the show. And I said, you know what? Everyone else will actually choose his name. I won't choose a name because I'll leave that down to the Whiskey Tube family that watches all of our videos and our massive community. So I actually just put that out, and I said, whoever gets the most likes on the actual comment, that will be the name for the actual monkey. And then it became Mr. Bananas. So ever since then, that's been his name. And I believe it was Gohabs who actually even chose that name for Mr. Bananas. So yeah, it's stuck since.
It's kind of funny. So W.C. Fields, actor from way back, black and white all days, he said there were two groups that he didn't like to be on screen with, and that was children and animals, because they tended to attract all the attention when he said he didn't like to act with them. So this is Zip, and I'm really glad I have him. I'm glad my parents preserved him. A lot of times on my travels, I'm glad my mom preserved that letter. It's just one of my little souvenirs from my childhood. So in the letter, I actually write in there. So I grew up in very much a science fiction family. And so before Star Wars came out, of course, there was Star Trek and Planet of the Apes, and I was a big Planet of the Apes fan. I think, and then trips to the zoo, San Francisco Zoo, the Oakland Zoo, and seeing chimpanzees. I think that's sort of where I fell in love with chimpanzees. And some people say, although not right now, I used to look a little bit like them. But anyhow, so let's talk a little bit about whiskey. So Bunnahabhain 12 is probably my very early stages in getting into peated whiskeys. Some people, there's a lot of debate. People out there thinking it's not peated. There is a minuscule amount of peat. And so it's just sort of dipping the tips of my toes into peat. And I really, really liked it. Was probably this. St. Andrews comes in a little golf ball, and Johnny Walker Black. But then this was my introduction to Islay as well. So Jason has reviewed this, and now we're enjoying a little bit of this together. We both got a bottle of the Bunnahabhain 12. So tell me a little bit about how you got into whiskeys. Everybody knows my story. Studying for WSET exams, one of the units was on spirits. I had no intention of getting into whiskey, but for the exams, I was studying various spirits, gin, rum, vodka, and so forth, and had a Macallan 12. Absolutely loved it. Next thing you know, boom, I'm just going bananas or monkey wild over whiskeys. Did I bump over whiskeys? And then eventually got into peated whiskeys and Islay and fall in love with Islay. So tell me a little bit how, because I don't think we've actually discussed that. I remember. How did you sort of get into whiskey?
So I started actually I think it would be three years this coming March on the channel, actually, because I started the YouTube channel. I think it was 3 years exactly on the first week of March. But initially, I was working at the airport, and I was mainly specializing with tobacco and cigars, etc. And one day, one of my friends, he was leaving the country and he was going away, and he gave me all of his whiskeys and he said to me, "Can you sell them? Make me the money and then send that to me." And I was like, okay, fine. And I didn't touch any alcohol at this point in time. So I'd say 3.5 years ago, I never touched a single drop of alcohol, not even a beer. And then so I sold all of his stuff for him, sent it to him, and he asked me, he goes, "Did you taste one of the whiskeys, which was a Balvenie 30?" And I said to him, "No, I didn't, but I was really curious about that one because we always used to talk about that one." And then he said to me, "Well, go and buy yourself one." I said to him, "No, I'm sending you the money because it's all yours at the end of the day." But I said, I'll go and explore it myself. So when I went to the Scotch Whisky Experience in Edinburgh, that's where I actually got to taste the Balvenie 30 for the first time. And I did the Balvenie 30 and the Glenfiddich 30 together. And that was just, incredible. And then it sort of, every time I sort of went through and traveled, or the way I actually started the channel is because I was looking at these travel retail exclusive whiskies. So I had Glenmorangie Tain, I've got a couple others like Tarlogan. So all these different travel retail whiskeys, I wanted to cover them because I said, no one's really covering travel retail. And so that's sort of how it got started. It sort of started with this really incredible sort of adventure into diving into that Balvenie 30. And then I tried an Islay whiskey, which was the Lagavulin 16, the first ever Islay whiskey I tried. And I just absolutely hated it the first time. I was trying to force myself to actually drink it. And I was like, no, why would someone do this to themselves? And I kept forcing myself to sip it until I finished the glass and say, no, I'll come back to it after a little period of time. But then there's a point in your whiskey experience and your whole sort of whiskey journey where you keep tasting so many different types of whiskeys that you want to see something a little different. And that's when I then went to an Islay whiskey, which was a Bunnahabhain 12 after that. And then I was like, okay, it's a bit lighter, it's a bit smoky. And I tried even Talisker, where you get that peppery character, that spiciness. And then I went back to the Lagavulin 16, and that's where it all just clicked. And I was like,
I was only getting into peated whiskies in the last few months. I'm going to start doing more Islay whiskies here on the channel, and now become a bit of a peat head. So I really love this whiskey, and I'm trying not to go through it too quickly, because when I get a new Lagavulin 16, I want to compare it to something that's been 8 years or older that we've still got around in the house.
Wow, this has got that smoky layer, and underneath it, it's got a little bit of that sherried, fruity character lingering underneath. And initially, when I first tried it, I never got that sort of fruitier character underneath. It was just smoke. But then when you go back to stuff like Bunnahabhain, that's got that. I also feel there's a little smoke in it. And it's just so gentle, but it sort of guides you on that way. And then it opens up that path into those Islay whiskies. And that's something that it's really incredible. But yeah, that's how it's been almost. So I started out initially just selling someone's collection, and then I was a bit inquisitive into understanding what is whiskey. And then as soon as you try one and you see how it differs from the next, and just going across them all, it's an incredible journey. And it's just now 3 years on, and it's more than 1,400 whiskeys, and just still that journey to want to understand more the different cask types, the actual cask sizes, and how that affects maturation, the temperatures in these warehouses. It's so much, but it's just so fun as well. So yeah, so it's been a fun journey so far.
It's kind of similar to my journey in music. The first band I was into was the Beatles when I was in elementary school, and they have a couple harder rock songs. You think of Helter Skelter. Now my brain's going blank. That's probably the hardest rock song. And then going into junior high, got into Rush, the Canadian band. So a little more harder rock, particularly Moving Pictures, 2112, Grace Under Pressure. And then we go into the 1980s, and then all the metal bands. So it's kind of, in just a couple songs, the Beatles introduced me to something a little bit harder rock. And then into Rush, and then even full on heavy metal, and then I switched to classical and opera later in my life. But there's a similar experience in acquiring that you like this type of food, this type of whiskey, this type of music, and there's a lot of parallel there. And it's interesting that the complexities of the bands that I like, and the elements I like, as well as the complexities of the whiskeys I like. And, I'm still, here we are in 2019, I'm still listening to the Beatles. I'm still hearing stuff that I didn't pick up on before. And this whiskey, this is one that I really, really liked in the beginning, or early in the beginning, and getting into peat. And now returning to it, I'm sort of having a deja vu experience of getting back into it all over again. Really, really fall in love with this all over again. So Roy's been to Islay, and I've been to Islay, and you've been to Islay. So you most recently went to Islay, right?
Yeah, I was there in August. So I went only for 36 hours. I actually didn't book the Islay leg of the trip. So I initially booked up to Glasgow because I always go to Glasgow to see my friend over there. But a few of my friends who came from Hong Kong, they booked the Islay leg. And I also booked Campbelltown as well. So I wanted to go Campbelltown because I really love that area of Scotland and the whiskies produced over there. And I said, you know what, it'll be great to go to Islay. And then I found out we're just there for one night. We get in early morning, we go to Port Ellen, and then that we leave the next day in the evening. And I was like, this is just crazy. You don't want to, when you go somewhere, you want to really experience it and take it away with you. In 36 hours, we visited each distillery. It was absolutely crazy. We didn't get to do every warehouse tour that I'd like to have done, but we did get to do the Bunnahabhain Warehouse 9 experience. We did the Caolila cask strength experience. We did Ardbeg with Ron. We also went to Lagavulin. We didn't get to do the warehouse, but I really heard that's a really great one.
Right, with Ian MacArthur. Yeah, he's a hoot.
I really want to go and try that actually, and go to Lafroig and just spend like a day there and just learn from Ian, because I've heard he's just like a fountain of knowledge. And then also went to Kilhome and had a tour there, and briefly at what's it called, Bruichladdich, because I've got this thing where I like the Black Heart series from Bruichladdich. So I've got the 4.1, the 5.1, and I've got a miniature of the 6.1, which I'm tempted to review soon. So I was just like, something, I'm trying to collect all the Black Hearts because I think it'd be really cool. And then also do a flight of them, because I think that would be really something. I'll send it out to Whiskey Tube and see what people think of all the Black Hearts up against one another. It'd just be, I don't know, something like that. It's just really crazy, but at the same time, it's a great series of whiskies. So
you went to Bowmore as well?
I didn't get to visit inside the distillery because it was closed on the Sunday. But what I did is went just around it, and I went down the actual pier so I could get a picture of the shot of the distillery. Actually, Mr. Bananas has a shot of that, so I didn't get a picture of myself. I took a picture of him on a rock in front of the sign of Bowmore. So it was. I want to go and actually experience, because I heard they've got some Mizunara oak casks actually at the Bowmore distillery. So that's one I really wanted to try, but I missed that one out as well, because we just had to really try scheduling everything really quickly. And when we did our plan, it was literally like you've got 10 minutes to get from one distillery to the next one. Otherwise, you'll miss your tour. And people say normally it's a 15-minute window.
And who's driving?
Unless, one of my friends actually. So one of the guys who came all the way from Hong Kong, he was driving. And then at the same time, whatever distillery we went to, we had like a massive amount of samples or driver samples to take home for him.
Right.
So at the last day when we were sitting at Port Ascot, waiting for the ferry to go back, he had like this massive box of samples. And he goes, Isla's been a good trip. I don't have to buy a bottle, but I've got all the samples that we tried. And he even got, I think he was lucky because I think one of the guys at Ardbeg gave him a Ardbeg 23 something. They call it 23 something. He gave him a miniature of that, and he was just over the moon because that's, a whiskey that's, 400, 500 pounds.
Wow.
So,
wow.
It was.
So similar trip. I mean, I probably didn't go as quite as rushed, but we went to the same distilleries. I did the same thing. My last day there, because we stayed at the Bowmore House in the town of Bowmore. For those who don't know, to give you a little geography, in the south is Ardbeg, Lagavulin, and Laphroaig. Bowmore is somewhat central. It's almost acts as like a capital of Islay. And then you have Bruichladdich, Kilchoman, Coila, and Bunnahabhain. And then right up there near Bunnahabhain is a new distillery. It's on maps. I don't know if it's open yet. They had a little showroom. It wasn't at the distillery. It was elsewhere for Ardnahoe. Did you see Ardnahoe at all, or down below or anything like that?
So yeah, actually, we when we were driving from when we were coming up from Port Ascot through to Bunnahabhain, we actually stopped at the Ardnahoe distillery, and they didn't have the pagoda on at the time. So it was quite cool because you see all the construction work. They've got a massive fence, and opposite there's like a little lake. Or a little small pond, well, big pond, I'd say. So I was interested in the pond because I love going fishing. But then at the same time, we had the distillery behind us, and we saw it there. But at the same time, we couldn't go and visit because it was just closed up. But I have spoken to the guys over there from Ardnahoe, and they said that if I go back to Islay next time, I'll be able to visit them as well at the distillery, which will be really cool.
So I'm already planning my trip for 2020. I'm going back. I'll be meeting up with you in July. In 2019, arriving on Independence Day, but I'm already planning 2020. I'm hoping to do that 1 week work at Springbank. We can actually work in the distillery for a week, and then from there, my second week I'm probably heading over to go back to Islay and then go up to Jura. I'm hoping by that time that Ardnahoe will be open, but at least for tours. Obviously, they're probably not going to have any aged whiskey available, but hopefully do a tour or something like that. So in terms of, do you have like preferences for any particular style of whiskey? Like Scott from Scott's Testament, he's more of a sherry guy. Bart's more of a peat guy. Alan from Whiskey Friend is more of a sherry guy. He's a big Glendronach fan. Do you have any particular style that you sort of favor?
So a lot of my subscribers will know I'm a big fan of Comte de Mort. Which is a closed distillery. Quite a shame actually, because I love that style of whiskey. It's really waxy. It's like a Clan Leash, but it's just got that little bit of that sort of an older character about it, which is almost like a dusty thing that I really love about it. But if I had to go against, if I'd say in general of whiskeys that you can accessibly get, for me, it's actually really just about unique cask finishes. So for me at the minute, it's just about exploring all these different, so Deanston have a brandy cask, Glendalought's Mizunara, which was in my whiskey of the year. That was really just, so interesting and very different from your regular, bourbon sherry casks. I do love peat and I do love the heavily sherried and also bourbon cask whiskies. But for me at the minute, it's just about exploring all these really interesting cask finishes and how it imparts a certain character in the whiskey, and then trying to see along a little trend to see if it does across other different distilleries or other companies that use the similar casks, because that's, for me at the minute, that's something really interesting. Actually, tonight I did also a little flight of different whiskies from different sort of styles, different casks, like a muscat cask, masala cask, a manzanilla cask. So just things like that, they just really intrigue me at the minute.
Or a Mizunara cask, like the Glendalough. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Glendalough, yeah.
Glendalough. And like you said, I think Bowmore is doing a Mizunara cask. There's a few others that are doing Mizunara cask. Of course, the Japanese, because it's their wood. It would be really, really interesting because one of the things I do in looking at whiskeys is try to figure out what is contributing, what is the spirit contributing, what is the oak contributing, what is, various elements, and sort of retro engineer a whiskey as much as you can. and there's always a certain amount of mystery to it. But talking about these unique casks, and like Longrow does these Longrow Red, really unique casks. I think the most latest one is a Pinot Noir, but they've done Cap Franc, Malbec, and others. But one of the things I would really love to do is do a lineup of Mizunara influenced whiskeys, Japanese, Scotch, Irish, and then see what elements in all these whiskeys do they have in common that is sort of a reflection of that Mizunara cask. Because like Pedro Jimenez, there's certain classic notes that I pick up on Pedro Jimenez, or port cask finish. The red wine cask that Longrow does, the influence of the wine doesn't seem like a wine influence. So sherry notes, Oloroso sherry, fig, dates, raisins. Port, you get raisins, but you also get sort of a blackberry jam, maybe blueberry. You get more of the sort of black and blue fruit notes to it. But the red wine cask that Longrow has been doing, they're great, they're fantastic, but I don't find anything in them that stands out, says I'm Malbec, I'm Cabernet Sauvignon. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. So that's actually that's one of the things that really intrigues me at the minute. So when you were saying that about Mizunara, so even like when I was looking at the Chivas, when Chivas have got their blend called the Chivas Mizunara, I was tasting that alongside the Glendalough, and I was trying to figure out what are these certain characters. I know Chivas is a blended whiskey, so you've got all these different contributing factors, but then it's like all the difference. And actually, that's one thing that actually I want to do is do a deconstruction. And I don't know, I've got to get permission for a few brands to get their new make spirit. But try the new make spirit, try the one that's actually finished in a type of cask, and then see the differences and the findings at the end. It's really like, I'd say it's super nerdy, but just recently, a few weeks ago, I got to meet Dr. Bill Lumsden from the Glenmorangie, and he was telling me that, he goes, whatever you want to do, like with every these different things, he goes, we do that because that's exactly how you learn with different whiskey creations down the line. And it was really, something so fun to hear someone actually say, you're not mad. You're actually, on the right lines for something to even be a potential master distiller, master blender. So it's great in that sense.
That's really cool. So it's similar to, when I'm always gonna bring in wine. So in my wine studies, you taste, what are the grapes like? How sweet are they in comparison to table grapes at the time of ripeness at harvest? What is it like after you mash them and the fermentation has started? What are they like, halfway through fermentation? What are they like when they're in the tank? What are they like when you first bottle it? What's it like after 6 months of aging, a year after aging? What's it like 5 years later? So you get an understanding of the progression of the wine. And the same thing with whiskeys. Like you're talking about, when I went to Kentucky, one of the things I really wanted to do was taste the White Dog or the new make. And I was able to do that at Jim Beam and Maker's Mark. And so you get a sense of that before and after effect, so you know what the barrel contributes to. But I wasn't, although I probably could have if I just asked. I didn't get to taste a new make at any of the Scottish distilleries.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that. So the first ever distillery tour I did was at Auchentoshan, because that was the first ever whiskey that I got my hands on when I was at the airport. And when I went to Auchentoshan's distillery the first time, they actually had the new make spirit, and then they had this really bluey colored one, which is, they say it's got all the coppers and everything, which they wouldn't recommend drinking. They said if you drink that, you're probably going to have something wrong with you. But with the new make spirit, in the midway on the tour, they actually had a bit, and they said they poured into a glass and said, if anyone wants to try it, feel free to do so. And everyone said no, they're gonna, they don't want to do that. But I actually stepped forward and said, yes, of course, I'm going to try the new make spirit, because that is effectively the DNA of the distillery. And then when you have the casks that come in and the cask influence, that's then masking or adding additional characters to that new make spirit. So the DNA is then just having something adding to it. So every time I go to a distillery, I always try to, get a little bit of new make, and I'm trying to see if I can actually get. They never want to give you an actual sample to take home, because I thought that'd be really cool for analysis. Because one of the distilleries I like to go to a lot when I'm in Glasgow is Glengoyne, and they always refuse to say, no, we're not going to give you new make spirit. That's like one of the things I always say. If you get a chance, Eric, I'd highly recommend just any distillery you go to, just casually, just say, I'm really interested in new make spirit and how it would taste. And 9 times out of 10, when I've been to these different distilleries, they'll be actually like, yeah, have try some new make.
So, now that I think of it, it just didn't stick in my mind. I think when I was at Auchentoshan, I think I did taste it. I just don't have a memory of it. So it would be nice to bring some home. There's a new distillery in Glasgow, right by the river or by the water. It's my brain slipping as the name of it, and they haven't released anything yet. But you can do a tour. Does it ring a bell?
Clydeside.
Clydeside, yes, Clydeside. Thank you. And you can get, so if next time you're in Glasgow, you can buy. I wasn't looking for it, but apparently in their shop you can buy a bottle of. You buy a whole bottle of new make from Clydeside, so you might want to check that out.
I'll definitely look into that. That sounds really fun, actually, because I was trying to see if I can go to Glasgow to see my friend before he does his completes his doctorate, just for a couple of days. And I said to him, I want to go to these certain distilleries, especially. I've even tried to speak to Strathclyde Distillery from Pernod Ricard, but they are very strict. They will not let you go inside over there. So, yeah.
So we're doing a lot of chit chatting, and I can kind of feel the people in the chat going all this talking, and they're not doing any drinking. When are these guys going to start doing some drinking? I have been when Jason's talking, I've been drinking, and so he just because you haven't seen me, you can see it in my hand. That's the trick when you're doing live streams. Is when the other guy's talking, you sip, and then when you're talking, then he can take a sip. So you got a glass there with you?
Yes, I've got my glass right over here. Actually, I'll look like I'm giving Mr. Banana some over there. I've even got my Erik Great Challenge coin over here.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
This has been back to Melroy so many times, actually. So it's the guys over there. I just show them this. Yeah, they straight away know. Like, oh, that's Erik. I was like, it's become a thing now in Milroy. So it's great.
Now, next time I show up, they go, "Hey, that's the guy on the coin."
You're already famous. You go there next time, you'll be a VIP straight away.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, man. I'm kind of jealous. I wish I had a place like that around here. There's a place I'm going to be checking out for Bourbon Month. It's called Quality Barbecue and Bourbons, and they have a real nice bourbon menu there. So I'll be checking that out for Bourbon Month, and hopefully. But I don't have a hangout place. Where there's a bunch of people hanging around and you just go and sample things. There's nothing like that here. There's a couple whiskey bars in San Francisco, but that's an hour away and going into the city at night or whatever. It's kind of not my thing. But anyway, so looking forward to it. Looking forward to getting back to London and seeing everyone there again.
Yeah, I'm sure the guys as well will be looking forward to it because last time we had an absolute blast. We went downstairs, I remember, to the vault, and then we came back upstairs, and I remember you got Eddie to even sign the bottle that you picked up.
Right.
Milroy's bottling.
Yeah, it's sitting right. I'll grab it real quick.
It's fire already.
It's right here. I've gotten down to the shoulder on it. So this is Milroy's, and then he signed it for me, which was awesome. And I have a glass from them as well. What are you getting on? Let's talk a little bit about this whiskey. I would say, like Whiskey Untitled, those guys, they're not into peated whiskey. Some people say this isn't peated. It is a minuscule amount. I pick up on it. I get a lot of sherry notes. I get a little bit of there's a barbecue character to it, a little bit of barbecue character to it, a lot of really nice spice, some sweetness, and a little caramels to it, a little bit of saltiness to it. And not a dried and canned fruits. What are you getting on it?
So straight away on the nose as well. I do get that little coastal maritime character. It's actually quite gentle. I do get that little whiff of smoke, and to me, it's almost like as if you've taken a vanilla pod and you've roasted it a little bit to just bring out that extra character of vanilla through it on the nose. And then also I'm getting that nice sherried character as well working its way through. To me, it's almost, I'd like to say raspberries, but it feels a little bit more like a sultana. And then I'm getting almost like a fudge note as well.
Yeah,
definitely sweetness, but
it's not chocolate. I think it's of Laphroaigs and Ardbegs that have a chocolate note. It is a different type of richness to it. It is definitely more of a fudge character to it. By the way, if you guys, anyone watching here, and you're in the chat, if you guys haven't subscribed or watched Jason's videos, I'm going to put a link at the end of this video so you can watch it. And I'll put a link down below. But I find I'm going to butter Jason's bread a little bit right now. I find him to be one of the most articulate reviewers. I find him to be one of the best describers, if that's a word, of whiskeys. I find you to be quite elegant, well-spoken. You present really, really, really well. And maybe we can talk a little about that because I'm kind of curious as your background. I just think you do a really, really. Sometimes you give descriptors. I'm kind of like, I don't know if I'd go. And then some of your descriptors are local things that I wouldn't know what that was because we don't have those here. You know what I mean? Like if it's like if it's a unique cake or something like that, or some candy or something like that, we don't get those here, so I don't know what you're referring to. But anyway, I would say you do a really, really good job. You're really good at presenting. You speak really, really, really well. Do you have any background of public speaking before you got into doing whiskey videos?
Not at all. Actually, I was very shy. I was a very shy person. So if you guys watch my first video or my first, let's say, 10 videos, I was very shy. I'd be like, "Hey guys, welcome to this," and it sort of just built the character. Built as I'd say, I developed a lot more confidence in front of the camera. And then when I went to whiskey shows, people would recognize me. And actually, when I went to one of the major shows here in London, the Whiskey Exchange show, which is normally around about end of September, October, lots of people were just shouting across from anywhere, like, "Oh, that's Jason Whiskey Wise," and I was like, I didn't even know I was going to get noticed. I just thought, I'm going to one of these whiskey shows to experience the whiskeys, see the atmosphere, and from that confidence then built up. And then nowadays I do tasting events, and brands call me to do different events for them. And I did a Deanston dining experience I'll say it was around about 4 months ago now, and that was incredible because we had like a room of people and pairing the whiskeys with the food. And even when people ask you all these different things about other whiskeys as well, they were surprised that I've got the knowledge as well on different whiskeys. I got to say, your Deanston video from your Deanston distillery was incredible. Very, very well put together.
Thank you. Yeah. So one of the things, and it's a learning experience, just like learning about whiskey, learning to navigate public speaking or do videos is a whole nother set of skills you got to develop. And I go back and I watch some of my old ones and I kind of cringe. My videos were way too long, sort of drone on and on and on and on. Most of my videos now are getting down 10 minutes or less. They tend to be a lot shorter, more to the point, more concise, wrap it up. But you have to come across with some energy. You can't speak in a normal, like if you and I are sitting at a restaurant, there's a different sort of way of speaking at that setting, or just around a dinner table versus doing public speaking. You have to project. You have to come across with some energy, and I think you do that really, really well. You really come off because that conveys enthusiasm and excitement about the whiskey. I think you do really, really well. I've really, really enjoyed it, and I learn a little bit different things from everybody in the whiskey tubers. Not only just about whiskeys, but just how the different people do different things. And so if there's new whiskey tubers who are watching in, watch a wide range of whiskey tubers, see what their strengths are, see what they do really well, and don't imitate necessarily because you want to be original, you want to be yourself, but you can get some tips from other people. And I just think you really, really do a good job. So the other thing is that when you mentioned is sometimes you don't know what you know until someone asks you a question, and all of a sudden this Wikipedia on whiskey or wine just poof, pops in your head like, wow, gee, I just gave this whole long speech on something I didn't even know I knew all that. So that's sort of your experience, is that all the studying, doing videos has really come in handy because when someone asks you a question, you're now able to recall everything that you've studied about a whiskey.
Yeah, so I get that quite a bit at the minute, even because like for me, I get told I'm over passionate about whiskey by a lot of people. They say, you jump too deep into it. Like, for being 3 years in, I met Jim Murray just a few weeks ago, and he told me you've got to spend 12 years to actually know the industry very well and know your whiskeys. And I said to him, well, in 3 years, I've developed a very, I'd say, an adequate palate. But yeah, it's one of those things that I find myself, I really just love the topic of whiskey. I love learning about all the different distilleries, about the casks again, about the different expressions that they produce, and even the thinking behind each creation, because that is a process in itself. So yeah, I get told I'm probably a bit too passionate, and that's why I think when a lot of people tell me when they hear my intro, or some people who watch my older intros when I just was getting that confidence into doing my intros, people are like, the first bit, if I'm wearing headphones, you made me deaf, and because after that I could listen to you.
No, I would say you're not too passionate. That's pure bullocks. If they start saying you're too American in your way of doing things, then you know, oh, that's really they've really gone off the end. They've been, but in terms of learning and stuff, I mean, I've been into wine for 20 years. I've been into whiskey since April 2016, and someone commented the other day, it's like, wow, Erik's been in a really short period of time, but look how much he's accumulated in terms of information. In the modern era of having immediate access to all kinds of information, growing and learning about any particular topic doesn't have to be that slow. If you're dedicated, motivated, and you put a lot of energy and time into it, as well as tasting stuff, there have been people who've become master sommeliers in like within a couple of years, and that's insane. I mean, that's nuts. So, they passed their certified. 6 months later, they're passing the advanced, and then a year later, whatever, they're passing the. Now, those are rare. Those are few and far between. That's less than 1%. But there are some people that are like that. They're just gifted. They're motivated, and they acquire those abilities and knowledge. Just overnight become a walking encyclopedia about wine. But yeah, I know the old timers. Well, back in my day, we spent years. We used to say, Vin said this the other day. Whiskey is a 40-year apprenticeship. And then if you acquire a lot amount of knowledge and they're 60, 50, 60, whatever, and all of a sudden you've acquired a lot of information, knowledge, experience, maybe a little bit, potentially know as much as they do, whatever. They can say, whoa, who's this young upstart? Who's that guy I think he is? But no, we're in a modern era in which you have the ability to learn a lot. The information is right at your fingertips. If you have a smartphone in your hand, get access to internet, anything you want to know, it's going to be right there.
Yeah, I'm always on my, like, that's what I was going to say. Almost lost you for a second. But yeah, I'm always on my phone researching stuff about different distilleries. If I see a different type of bottling or something that I've not experienced before, then I'm always looking into that a little bit more. I think it's called Malt Yearbook. It's one of my favorite go-tos every year. I'll pick that book up because it's just so much of information about the distilleries, about their production, their capacity, and then all about even also expressions as well. So that's a fountain of knowledge in itself. So there's books that if you don't have maybe your phone access to, there's books out there. But I always go for the ones with a lot more information than necessarily the Whiskey Bible, for example. That's just got a guy's opinion. For me, I'm always looking at that knowledge just so you can learn a little bit more and then develop across. So yes, and then if you got a favorite distillery, learn it inside and out. That's one thing I'd say is a starting point. For anyone who's looking into developing their knowledge, just learn about your favorite distillery. Learn about, for example, the capacity, the different bottlings, the core range, the limited editions, and then look into the process as well. What makes them different from different distilleries? Then, when you learn another distillery, it becomes so easy, and then you're straight away building that knowledge so fast that in a few months you'd be very, very knowledgeable in a certain sector, and then say a year down the line, you'll probably know everything about a majority of different distilleries. And there's so much to keep learning. There's just so many distilleries popping up. So it's a process that you're going to keep learning throughout the whole time as well. And that's something that I'm finding at the minute. So the more distilleries that there are and the different styles, the different types of stills. So it's just all these different things that contribute to that certain distillery and make it unique.
So a couple questions. One, you've done a number of Bunnahabhain reviews. If I count, I think it was like 6 or 7 different Bunnahabhain bottlings you've done.
I think it's 7. It might be 6 or 7. I don't know. I tried to review as many as I could because I had drams of each one, which I bought back a year ago. And
then have you already done the Moin Oloroso, or do you have that one coming up?
I've got the Moin Oloroso, a dram of that one. Because that's a really, really good whiskey. I'm just going to say straight off the back, if anyone sees the classic Moin Oloroso, just pick it up. It is just amazing. And then I've also got the Moin Oloroso Fashil bottling for this year's whiskey Islay Festival, the Fashil, which actually is with one of my whiskey club members, so I'm going to wait till I get that back. But yeah, that's also, I tried that at a distillery, and flick of a thing like that, I tried a little taste. I was like, taking a bottle. The person goes, "You can only take one at a time." I was like, okay. So I said to my 3 other friends, I said, "Guys, you're buying one of these bottles each. Don't question it. You'll enjoy it." And we sat on the ferry.
I just said that was my whiskey out of my top 10 for 2018. That was my number 1, and I brought it with me to the Scotch Test Dummies 50th anniversary. Shared it with people there, and then I passed it on to the Scotch for Dummies, and they reviewed it, really like it. And yeah, if I can get my hands on another one in my next trip, definitely will grab one. That was absolutely fantastic. And Scott and Bart reviewed that one as well. I have a couple other whiskeys. They're not the same. I don't think they're as good, but there's that similar sort of, itch that they scratch, in terms of a general flavor profile. One is the Balekin heavily peated Burgundy cask that I picked up got from Indianapolis. It's absolutely spectacular. So, do you have a particular favorite? Say, we're enjoying this Bunnahabhain. Do you have a particular favorite on Islay?
So yeah, actually, I was speaking to one of my subscribers as well and patrons, Dwayne, and I actually I'm a big fan of Lagavulin, but Bunnahabhain has kind of taken over that as my first place. So it's just because the whiskeys over there. I've got the Moine Oloroso, which is like one of the ones I really love. You got that sherry and peat, and they're really well balanced together. You've got some peated stuff from them in their Moine range. You've got some unpeated whiskeys as well. The 18 is just truly spectacular. Then you've got even the 12, which 12 is like a really perfect go-to Islay whiskey. For me, I find that just such an easy go-to whiskey, and that's why I think Bunnahabhain is probably my favorite on Islay. But I also have a soft spot for Kalila. I went to that distillery thinking, it's just a warehouse. It's just going to be, like a factory basically, producing. I think it's like 6.5 million liters on Islay. Majority of it just going for blends. But then the actual people over there really change your perception of that, and you start to love that place. And I was like, wow, Kalila and Bunnahabhain are like, I'd say the Bunnahabhain's first place, and then it's like Kalila and Lagavulin fighting for that second place spot.
I'm probably my number 1 is Ardbeg, and then close second is Lagavulin. I like Laphroaig too, but when I tend to go peated, I tend to like to go full on. And I love this one. This was my introduction to Islay, and really an early introduction getting into peated whiskeys. But I'm a big Ardbeg fan. I'm a bit of a cult member of the Ardbeg cult, but really love those. So, how many? I'm just kind of curious. So, I'm a big travel place. I like to learn about the people, the place, and production. I like travel. I've been everywhere in California, every wine region in California. Been around Oregon. Been to Virginia actually. I haven't been to Washington State. I want to go to Washington State, visit wineries there. Been to Burgundy, France. I would like to go to Italy and Germany and some of the other wine regions, but right now my passion is focused on whiskey. So have you been to other distilleries? You've been to 7 out of the 8. I mean, you walked around Bowmore, but you've been to 7 out of the 8. You've been to other distilleries. You've been to Deanston, and what else?
So I've been to all of them on Campbelltown, all 3 of them basically, Springbank, Glengyle, and Glen Scotia. I went to Glengoyne, Auchentoshan, and Deanston. Also went to, what was the other one? Glen Turret Distillery, known for the famous grouse. So that's going to be actually, I believe, under Glen Murray. I actually went to also Glen Murray in Speyside. It's the only distillery I visited in Speyside, believe it or not. I also went to Clynelish and Brora. Brora, the tour was meant to be just Clynelish, but I kind of convinced them that, I've come all the way from London. I've only got this much time, and I got one of my friends as well who came from Hong Kong as well. So I said, can we kind of just go into Brora? And they were like, yeah, we'll take you to the warehouse. And then they took us into some of the old, where the bottling plants were. And I was told it's just part of the upgraded tour, but they let us go there and see it because there was just me and him on the tour. And it was really great stuff because seeing how old Brora is and now seeing it going to be reactivated next year, it's going to be incredible. And hopefully they get the whiskey to be, I'd say fingers crossed, on the same lines. I also went to Thomasin, which again, you think, I've never heard so much about it, but when I drove there and we were driving through Scotland and I saw it and I was like, we have to stop there. I just want to pick up a distillery exclusive. I won't be able to do the tour because they were closing within 2 minutes. We were there just literally 2 minutes before 4 o'clock, and they were closing. And I believe the gentleman's name is Ken. I think he's one of the managers over there. I just went in. I said to him, I just need a distillery bottling. You name it. He goes, well, I'll pour you a sample of each one. And they had 5. So I tried a little sip, and I was like, Oloroso. And he goes, don't worry, I won't rush you. Just, take your time. And I was like, that's so awesome. And then, that was a really great thing. I also went to Aberfeldy, to Dewar's Aberfeldy. And their tour is probably the most futuristic tour I've ever been to, because they really just changed the whole thing. And you've got like 3D. It looks like almost like you have ghosts walking around with you on the actual tour. And I was like, that's something. And then they've got this really lovely seating area in the actual tour when you're walking around learning the history of Aberfeldy and how John Dewars got started. And then when you actually go to taste the whiskies at the end, and you go around the distillery, it's just a really great tour. So I was quite impressed with that. It's very futuristic, though.
Aberfeldy, I have to put. I don't think it's on my list for this year. I'll take a look at it. That sounds really interesting. You haven't been to the new Macallan distillery yet?
No, I haven't been there because the only ones I've been to in Speyside was Glenmurray. I sadly was meant to have a private tour at Glenfiddich with Brian Kinsman, the master distiller, malt master, so to speak. But I had to detour because one of my friends who I was there with got sick, so we had to go and detour and just go to Glenmurray. But next time, never blow up a master distiller. I'm just saying that if any of you guys are going to visit and you've got a master distiller, it's going to meet you. Never ever, cancel on them, even if your friends are well.
Especially when you travel all the way from London.
Yeah. So what you do, the tip for anyone, just pick your friends out the car and
drive all the way from London. I'm like, that's not that far.
I know. I think I saw this in when you and Vin's premiere earlier. Here in the UK, like from me going up to Scotland on the train, 4 hours sitting on a train, that was killing me because I'm used to just getting on a plane, 30 minutes, I'm there happy. For me, sitting for more than an hour or two, even in a car, I get absolutely bugged. It's just something I feel very uncomfortable that, I can't do something and I feel my productivity sort of, prevented. So that's like, so I think when Vin was saying that you guys travel like sometimes for a good few hours, or I think when Scottish Dummies went all the way down to Texas, they were driving for such a long period of time. And I was just like, that's incredible. I don't have that patience, sadly, to go on big road trips.
You do find ways to pass the time, particularly, if you're not driving, you can find ways to pass the time when you're doing stuff. But I just think it's funny. All the way from London, I'm like, wait a minute. I was thinking if I lived in the UK, I lived in England, man, like every weekend I would be up there in Scotland, going places, visiting distilleries. I will have been to, out of the 128 distilleries, 81 are open to the public. Then there's 2 that are either being constructed or under reconstruction. So I would have been to all of them by now. I'm used because California, it's 8 hours between here and San Diego, 8 hours driving on a freeway. And then it's 10 hours, 6 hours to get to the northern border. So you're talking 6 plus 8. It's a 14-hour drive from the most southern end to the most northern end of California. And I've been all of it, visiting wineries all over the place. So I guess I'm just used to driving all over the place, enjoying the countryside.
Yeah, it's just like, especially in the UK, that travel is, sometimes some people love it. Like one of my friends, he'll drive for like hours on end. He'll go from here to Wales just in a day and then come back. And I was like, that's madness. But he likes that. So I said to him, next time I go to Scotland, you're just going to be driving me around. I'll go to the distilleries, and that way we both get that enjoyment. But also getting back to actually about the distilleries, not just Scotland. I've been to a few distilleries here in London. So we've got Bimber Distillery in Park Royal. We've got the East London Liquor Company, which I want to actually, next time you're here, I want to take you to 3 of the distilleries that are here in London that I actually now have got contacts to. And then also when I was in Taiwan, I went to Kavalan. So that was like something, I love Kavalan. It's one, I think everyone knows I've done every single product review of Kavalan except for I think 4 whiskeys in total. But it's just one I really love. So it's just, I had to visit it when I was in Taiwan.
Going to, because I'm talking about Japan. So I'm looking at least 2 more trips back to Scotland, maybe I get Ireland, but I would eventually I'd like to get to Japan. Of course, I got language issues. I've got to figure out how I would get around. But after reading Dave Broom's book on the way of whiskey, on Japanese whiskeys, I would really like to go there. But we're more about Scotch and Islay and so forth. What was sort of your? I mean, you've been to Islay just like one time. What was sort of your overall impression of the place overall, and the whiskeys, the place, and everything else?
So personally, with Islay, I love the distilleries. I love going around. But the thing I'd highly recommend if anyone's going there is take that little extra time when you're at different places to really absorb the atmosphere. So when we were at Ardbeg, I actually went to the back and we were climbing, and that's where I got a picture of Mr. Bananas, and I was holding him like this on a weird rock and getting a picture like that. And then I was like, I threw him behind me so he doesn't fall off the cliff. And I was like, at least if I fall off, Mr. Bananas is still there. But you just take in the atmosphere. Like for me, Islay, it was 36 hours. But when I look back on it, when I was sitting on the ferry back from Port Aske back to the port on the mainland, I was really missing it so much. Every single distillery, every experience, it felt like you've been there, and it felt like an age almost. It felt to me, I felt like I spent, maybe a month there, and it feels like part of you is left on the island of Islay. And I felt, at some point, just when we were actually going away from Port, because you come away from Port Aske and then you're turning down, and as you're going south, I could see some of the distilleries, and I was like, I really love that place. And I actually inquired a property when I was out there because I was like so tempted to just move out there. My family said to me, Jason, you're not being silly, you're not moving to Islay. But I would have totally done that if I had no nothing else yet. I'd just totally move there because it was so incredible.
It's funny because I had the exact same experience. I had the exact same thing. I started Googling, real estate and houses for sale on Islay there. I had the exact same experience there. And, Roy and I were talking about this, perhaps we're getting a little overly romantic and whatever, but it is just a really unique place with a unique subculture. It's just, I mean, the Highlands, Speyside is great. Loved it all. But it has a uniqueness. I'm looking forward to going up to Orkney in this next trip, another ferry ride, and see what that's like. Visiting Arran, another ferry ride on there, and just seeing how much there. And I'll be going to Campbellton, the 3 distilleries there as well, and just seeing how different they are than from the. I mean, I loved it all, but I did find that I just had a special place for Islay, and I'm looking forward to go back. Hopefully, back again in 2020. So, what are you? I mean, so what are you currently doing with? Do you have any particular goal or anything like that with your channel? I'm doing Islay month, and then I'm gonna do bourbon month, and then I'm going down to Texas, visit Texas distilleries. I don't know if I'll do a whole month on Texas or not, and I haven't got the rest of the year planned out. But I'll come up with sort of themes and ideas and stuff like that, and I want to interact with more whiskey tubers, get to know, have a tighter community amongst whiskey tubers, and get to know people better. But have you got any goals or plans or anything particularly with your channel people should know about?
So at the minute, I've not been, basically for 2 weeks, I haven't uploaded a video because I had a bit of a cold and I was on antibiotics. But coming up soon, I've got a bit of an Irish Whiskey Week where I've been asking everyone for their recommendations for whiskies that they want to see featured during the Irish Whiskey Week. I've got, I'd say a 2-week Bourbon Week. So that might be quite cool because I'm probably going to try to link it as well along with the same time frame where I'm actually going to dive into bourbon for the first time on the channel. So I've got everything from, the Wellers, and I got a couple of Pappies as well, but I don't know if I should put them in the first 2 weeks of Bourbon Month or Bourbon Week. I've got also stuff like Glenfarclas, the full core range up to the 25, and I'm trying to just sort of explore a lot more different whiskies, and I'm actually going to be planning to do a bit more informational videos, not just reviews, because reviews are great, but actually teaching people about the different things that are how I'm learning, like cask types, the sizes, and giving people that knowledge that tomorrow, like for example, if you sat in a Roy's quiz, you'd straight away know exactly the answer comes straight to your head and be like, yes. Like when I watched your Deanston video, I learned so much about it being a cotton mill before I even went to the distillery and learned about the history of it. and then learn about the fact that they use the water turbines because of the actual river that goes right alongside it. So things like that, a little bit more knowledge based, I'd say, throughout the year. And I'm actually planning content at the minute. So I've got 5 videos which I'm working on at the minute, and that's minus the reviews. So reviews I'm also working on, but reviews I'm going to try to limit maybe to 4 or 5 a week, and then have 1 informational video also per week. So it's going to be 5 videos a week. I'm going to try to keep it to. It's going to be quite a lot, but I've also got this goal that I want to achieve a certain amount of reviews in a year. So last year I broke my previous year's record of number of reviews, and I think at the minute I'm around about 240 reviews. So I'm trying to see if I can get up to maybe 400 before at the end of 2019.
Wow. Well, I think I just hit 250 just for whiskeys. That doesn't take into consideration the stuff I had on my wine channel. And of course I had to carry over from my old channel onto here. And this whiskey channel is only going, I don't know, 5, 6 months, maybe something like that. I'm totally looking forward to everything you got going on your channel. Looking forward to watching, looking forward to learning along with you. One of the things, particularly, I'm 52 years old. There's short and long-term memory, and I enjoy hearing, even if it, so like I can have multiple books on the same topic that cover the same information, but different people have different way of saying things, and it gets ingrained in my head from different people. But I also find listening to other people's voices, even though they're covering some of the same grounds that I've already covered or whatever, I just find it really helpful to reinforce what I've already studied. And a lot of my whiskey tuber watching is, a lot of times I'm at work and I'm, on your computer and you're working and you're doing paperwork, the humdrum stuff, but so it's a lot of times I'm more listening to a whiskey tuber than watching. But if you say something or show something, I'll turn over and watch or whatever. Or if, when I'm doing stuff in the house, there's another voice in the house listening, watching whiskey tubers. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you're doing. And I think I'll benefit from it, even if it's something I've heard before, covered before, just to sort of reinforce my own studies. Something I basically got the draft done, and I can send you a copy of it. It's sort of a primer on Scotch whiskey. It's like maybe 60 pages, and it's a primer is just an introduction to. But it was the editing process and writing process of putting it together helps me learn. But I can send that to you. There's tons of information on the internet, whatever. But I'd be interested in what you, because I go into a little bit deeper on grains and so forth than some resources do, stuff like that. But I think you'd enjoy it. I'll be distributing it for free. I think it should be done. I'm always worried about another typo, or something like that in it, but I'll send it to you. I think you might benefit from it as well. So anyhow, I think we've been going for about an hour or so. Kind of want to keep these premieres down to an hour. We could hang out and talk for probably another 2 hours, and we'll be definitely meeting up in a few months from now when I return to London. Funny, I'll be landing on Independence Day, our Independence Day from England will be the day I arrive there, which you guys won't be celebrating that, I guess. You won't be
some bars in London do. They've got, I think, a couple of bars in London. So even with, for example, Canada Day, all the Canadians come out around Covent Garden, and they just got all the bars go wild. So I think in Independence Day as well, they'll probably have something going on.
We got rid of the Americans. We got rid of Americans. Yeah, we got rid of them. Yeah, so great.
So, yeah.
Anyway, excuse me. Anyhow, so it's been absolutely fantastic having you on. Really, really enjoyed our discussion. Enjoyed the whiskey. So again, if you guys in the chat, if you haven't subscribed, please do give us a thumbs up, and definitely check out Jason's channel if you haven't seen it. I'll put a link at the end of this video and down below. Any final comments, Jason?
Thank you very much for having me and Mr. Bananas on the show as well. And it's great to actually share this whole whiskey sort of journey, but at the same time talk about Islay, because it's a region that I feel doesn't get, it's got a lot of people that love it and never get to visit it, but they've got so many great whiskeys. And even Bunnahabhain, they kind of go under the radar to a lot of people, because a lot of people know the 3 core ones down near Port Ellen, the Ardbeg, Lagavulin, and Lefroy. So it's great to actually cover certain things like that. As you said, put the actual wave over there.
All right, so Zip wants to say goodbye. anyhow, thank you all for watching, and cheers. You're supposed to say cheers, Sanj.
Oh, cheers. That's Lodger.
Hey, if you like my review, be sure to check out these other whiskey videos.